Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Dominique Gonçalves from Mozambique, just across the channel. And it's a pleasure to be here. It's my first time in Madagascar. Seen a lot of things that reminds me of home. Others are quite different, but it's more about the similarities. So I am an ecologist, which focuses more on elephant conservation in terms of behavior, ecology, and human-elephant conflict and coexistence. So today in my talk, just to give you a little bit of outline, I'm gonna start by grounding you a little bit of where I come from, the protected area where I work, because besides being a student, I also work in a national park. I'm part of staff and the scientific services. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of overview of that. And then I'm going to dive a little bit of my project, there. By project, I don't mean just a research project, but an in-depth project in the park. And then I'll give you some of the examples of results that I've been getting through my kind of career research and what comes next. And then I'm going to, again, broad even more in the African context and youth and conservation and research. Okay? Please stop me anytime if I'm speaking too quickly or if I'm being just bubbly and you can't really understand. I apologize that I do not speak any Malagasy, so you have to bear with me in English or Portuguese, you choose. Right? So, to start, I wanted to remind you that people and nature, people and environment, people and wildlife has been linked and connected for millennia. For time immemorial. We always have a certain connection between these two or three or four. You decide how many boxes you want to put in this bubble. But we need to also remember that many of these connections depend on the culture, the place, what we have, how we use, how we perceive. But one thing, very important thing that happened and set the tone for what we're living now is our past. As in the global south, as in Africa, as the history of how certain things were done or made in those times. And I'm talking about how colonialism, for example, kind of separated or broke this strong link between people and nature in many, many places, especially in the continent. I have to remind you that was only most of protected areas in the continent and perhaps here as well. They were funded in 1960s. That was kind of at the peak of, almost the end of the colonialism, at least in Mozambique. And at that time, the conservation students would call that fortress conservation, where the idea was to have people out, nature protected, reserved, or nature only for wealthy people, mostly from outside, that would come and enjoy nature, but the local people that share the same ecosystem were out, or maybe just working to serve these others. So nature was many, many times seen as profitable only. And it was only in 1992, and the Rio Summit, that it was said that local people, native people, should be seen as part of the solution and not the problem for conservation of these beautiful and wild places. Yeah, only in 1992, almost 32 years ago. And not only there, but things kind of died out a little bit, and as locals and native people battle for their rights of land and etc., etc. But it was in Kigali in 2022 that in the Congress, the African Protected Area Congress, that this saying was brought back even strongly, and was the first time that actually governments acknowledged the injustice done to the native and local people or any people that live close to nature. Because before it was just on paper, but this time we are acknowledging and we are moving forward trying to do something. So now we are basically, in terms of our nature, what about nature? We are approaching tipping points. I don't know if you guys have seen the last Living Planet report from WWF. Not a perfect thing, but gives a big insight of where biodiversity and nature is going and what needs to be done and which actions we should perhaps take right away to maybe mitigate or try to do something about the situation. And there's also now that it's predicted that in the next 50 years, I'll say even less now, that the population is set to double in the continent, right? African population is set to double. We are experiencing a lot of more climate change. Cyclones are becoming more frequent and more intense. It's also now that a lot of conservation and research programs and projects are set, and some of them are being very, very successful. And it's also now where governments have to balance human development or people and conservation research in nature. So what about large mammals? Large mammals are really in the middle of this triangle of intense protection with NGOs and etc., with governments trying to figure out what to do, and climate change as well, as it impacts a lot on their movement. And of course, the example I bring here is elephants. So for those of you who don't know, elephants, or the African savanna elephant, is magnificent. It's the largest living land mammal on Earth. They can weigh up to 7 tons. They are social matriarchal society, which means that in a group, the females are always together, the mothers, aunties, daughters, grandmothers, and etc. And the male stays in the group until a certain age of 14, when they disperse and find other males and etc. But the females, a herd is composed from maybe 2 to 60 elephants, and they have the fusion dynamic, which means that they can, during a dry season, for example, they would go and spread themselves to different places, and then they come together in and out. So, of course, the habitat range from moist forests in Africa to desert of Mali or Namibia and many other places in Africa. As they move, you heard me saying 7 tons, they eat a lot, right? And they are also the ones that eat only certain species with big seeds, right? So as they move along the landscape, they drop, and the dung they drop helps maintain the forest or grow forests and have the ecosystems we have today. And the way they eat as well, they kind of trim the forest and allow the other species would come and get to those resources. That's why they're called keystone species. Any question? Any burning question about an elephant or anything? Go on.
Is there a reason why they spread in certain climate?
Yeah. Good question. Why do they have fusion and fission? Well, there's many hypotheses. One, if you think of the idea field distribution theory, it's more about resources distribution. There's also social dynamics, and different mothers, different co-matriarchs, they might spread and use different habitats that they prefer, and then when they meet, they again together and then go again. So it's a more ecological and social behavior thing that they do. And it's amazing to hear when 2 different groups come together again. The ceremony, as it is called, is a unique experience. Yeah. I didn't ask him to ask any question before, just make sure. So, however, these iconic species that represents a lot for the African continent, not only represents the importance in terms of keystone species, but is in terms of pride, is in terms of political also power. Countries that have elephants have a lot to say in the continent. So imagine African continent without elephants. I cannot imagine. I don't know. Maybe you guys in Ireland can, but I cannot imagine that. And there's also a very, very charismatic species in many things. But there's many threats also for elephants, and threats for elephants are dynamic and complex, from habitat fragmentation, ivory poaching, to now human-elephant conflict, and of course, on the top of everything, climate change. So we used to have many, many elephants, but we had about 2 big ivory poachers waves that wiped out many numbers in Mozambique, in one of the protected areas in the north. From 14,000 elephants, in 2 years, we had only 4,000 elephants. This is just one example. You'll see more as I share more about the elephants on this place, what I'm going to talk about. But that's what we have now, the remaining population. However, even though the general trend is of population decline, in certain places the elephant populations are stabilizing or even growing. And this is in this place very close to my heart, in Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique, where I work. I am from Mozambique. I am from Beira, the town in the same province where Gorongosa National Park here is. and it's very close to the coast, 3 hours drive. And Gorongosa National Park is located in the end of the Great Rift Valley. So when you go there, it's flat, it's plain, except the Mount Gorongosa. So you may not think that you are in the Rift Valley, but you are in the base of it. So we have a massive flat plain, and that's where, a lot of things happened in the past in this area, and the system still provides a lot. This park was proclaimed in 1960s by the colonial rule, and after the independence in 1975, Mozambique entered a 10-year civil war that ended in 1992. And during this civil war, we lost more than 90% of our large mammals, including elephants. However, in 2008, the government of Mozambique started this public-private partnership between the CAR Foundation, US-based, and the government of Mozambique for the restoration and management of the park. Please understand, this is not like giving the park to an institution from outside. No, it's a co-management. We have a long-term agreement, although you'd say that the private part is the one that puts more resources and everything on this, but also we also have more autonomy and deciding what to do and when to do things. The fact that the park is located in this end of the Rift Valley, the habitat is extremely different. It ranges from woodland, savannas, grasslands, a little bit of rainforest on Mount Gorongosa, and miombo forest and floodplains and so on. So it creates a lot of ecotones or overlapping of ecosystems that then bring many, many different species. In the 60s, the park was known as like the Serengeti of the South, because it was so rich not only in biodiversity or diversity of animals, but also in biomass. There were many, many animals. Before I dive into elephants and other things, I'm going to play this video that's going to save me 20 minutes, where my colleague explains a little bit about Gorongosa National Park, the vision, and what we're doing there. And afterwards, if you have any question about parks and etc., we can go there, but just listen to this. I think it's only 2 minutes.
Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique is known as one of Africa's greatest wildlife restoration stories. In 2008, the park had only 10,000 large animals. Today, over 100,000. But the Gorongosa project isn't just about rewilding this iconic wilderness. Inspired by the shared vision of Mozambique's former president, Joaquim Chissano, and Nelson Mandela, there is a deep commitment that the park should benefit the local people. The park provides over 600 jobs in conservation, science, tourism, and human development. Our community health workers reach over 100,000 vulnerable people every year. Our sustainable agriculture projects, like growing coffee on Mount Gorongosa, improve the incomes and the lives of farm families. Mandela was right when he said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So we build new schools, support teachers, and run many after-school programs like the girls' clubs. We're working to keep girls in school so that they can have the same opportunities in life as the boys. And every year, we bring thousands of local children on safari in the park so they can reconnect with their precious natural heritage. Some of them may choose to become part of our team, so we provide many different training courses and internships. Students can even study for a master's degree in conservation biology in Gorongosa. We are showing the world an example of what a national park can be.
Right, so that is outdated already in terms of numbers, etc., but gives you a little bit of an idea. But yeah, going now in terms of research, there's a lot of... oh, you have a question? Are you stretching? Okay, cool. in terms of research, there's a lot of documentation now of all this rewilding process, or restoration process we have been through. For example, before the war, and we saw the vast decline of meso-herbivores, and now right after the restoration started, we're seeing a slower recover of those species comparing with other herbivores, for example. I mean mega to meso herbivores. And I could share all these info or papers afterwards, but it was just to show you that we need to remember that all this the success is not because of bringing animals back only. It's also because of people. You know, the people next door that allows these things to happen, that are involved in the process, and are becoming guardians of everything. For example, it's impossible to have this kind of success without good protection. Good protection is key. So kudos to our rangers teams that kind of managed to decrease poaching up to 72% since the restoration started. And if we go to the roots and why poaching was happening that much, we'll get to a basic thing, which is poverty. And people need protein, people need more, people need basic needs met. But you cannot really protect what you don't know. And until recently, Mozambique is still one of the very biodiverse countries, but with least knowledge of our biodiversity or the status of our species. And, you know, this is something that we are starting to change slowly, but we still need a lot of help and collaboration and support from others to really understand what we have so we can better protect them. Until recently, Gorongosa was also not completely, but really, really poorly understood. But now we rank as one of the national parks with more knowledge of our own biodiversity, the status of our biodiversity, and how things are linking together. For example, this is our Bible. Framework of Gorongosa ecosystem was a PhD thesis by Dr. Ken Tinley, who was in Gorongosa before, during, and after the war. And at those times, oh my God, a PhD thesis, he did everything from geology, botany, and animal ecology, everything. He did a transit from the top of Mount Gorongosa all the way to the delta of the Zambezi River. You know, looking at hydrology, soils, and etc. So this is our baseline. This is our comparative kind of, analysis what we had, how things were, and what we should perhaps try to get back, but maybe just let things unfold. And as you can see in this graph, until 1938 or so, no knowledge, no nothing. And then it was a hunting concession first, and then a national park. But of course, the colonial rule, they were not really interested to know what they had in terms of biodiversity. Of course, only the cool species, the big five, etc., that would be more profitable. And then we had our civil war. And of course, during that time, besides Kentili and some other, maybe 2 or 3 researchers there, no one was looking into biodiversity or anything in Gorongosa. And in 2004, we started the Gorongosa project, and in 2013 we had our first biodiversity survey, where we just take specialists in all logias or areas we can find, and we go for 3 weeks to a place in the park, and it's just documenting. This is first biodiversity survey, but now we have many more, and not only surveying but teaching surveys or teaching students how to do that, so these things can be replicated in other protected areas. And this is thanks to this place and this man. What's his name? He has his name, but this is where I work. This is the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Laboratory. That is this hub of research and education in the scientific services in Gorongosa National Park. So the park has different departments, conservation, science, blah, 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 blah. But in science department, this is our hub. This is our installations. This is what we do. We have our offices, our labs, our rooms for everything, and education. And the Biodiversity Laboratory is named after E.O. Wilson because he was kind of a patron for us. He loved Gorongosa. He wrote about Gorongosa, and the moment he would land, the first thing he would do was look in the grounds for what? Ants, of course. And the lab has his name, and we have 4 main pillars. As I said, we cannot protect or do anything in terms of conservation if we don't know what we have. So we are trying to document everything from plants, animals, fungi, and we want to see the relations between all of them. So to understand how they are, what they do to our ecosystem, but how can they impact the well-being of the people and the environment where we are. And then after that, we do monitoring of key species. You can imagine key species, elephants, carnivores, plants, and other things. And these are set projects. For example, the Elephant Ecology Project is there as well. And in education, as I say, this is our main strongest pillar, is education of the next generation of Mozambican scientists, researchers, conservationists. The E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Laboratory and Gorongosa Scientific Service welcome people from all over the world in terms of research. It's easy for you to get a permit, a proposal, you get a permit, etc. You come and you do your research. But we know that these researchers won't be there forever. And we want the next generation of Mozambican students to be able to do same or even better. So that's why we focus strongly on education, not only with the master's course, but also a lot of other workshops or seminars or trainings, let's say in, ants-related stuff. There's ones we received a massive group from Harvard, all studying ants and etc. and trainings and etc. A lot of that happens. And of course, we have a strong presence in terms of media and outreach, because we want to share with Mozambicans and also with the world. So I am a very proud member of the scientific department. I manage the Elephant Ecology Project there. But yeah, this is an highlight of our documentation. I would say Piotr Naskra could say, this is outdated, Dominique. Yes, the number is perhaps bigger than this. But yes, and counting, and many new species to science, and still discover not only to science, but maybe new records for Mozambique. And also, yes, it's a hub for training of Mozambicans, and we are already sharing the results of our capacity building with Mozambique. And most of our master students, alumni, are all already set in different protected areas or research hubs in Mozambique. They are highly sought. They have a lot of skills, not only in research, but also conservation practice and implementation. So you might have a new mini Piotr doing amazing stuff with nature, etc. in documentation, or you have a new manager of a protected area or so on, or bioeducation. This year, we did, January. Last year we did our census, which is every 2 years, and we counted more than 110,000 animals, only in 60% of the park where is the counting block. And we're already giving some of our antelopes to other protected areas in Mozambique to share, to help restore. So just the little impact, at least in one department that we have, which is science. And of course, the Gorongosa National Park is managed in a sense that science directs or guides the management of the park in all other departments. So onto the elephants, as I said, I started the Elephant Ecology Project there, and I manage the Elephant Ecology Project. But elephants of Gorongosa, as you can imagine, have a dark past. During that 16-year civil war, they were decimated. They were the species that perhaps suffers the most. From 2,500 elephants that were roaming along the park. After the war, Tinley counted less than 200. Joyce Poll estimation also was less than 200 elephants. So they were mostly hunted for the ivory, to trade for weapons and the meat to feed soldiers. But I would also say, even after the war, protection of a national park or natural resources was not the first kind of thing on the agenda. So there was also a lot of opportunistic hunting going on in Mozambique, even after the war. So it took us time to grasp things. So elephants suffered a lot. And in this recovering population now, that we have more than 1,000, which is a great increase from those less than 200 in 32 years or so. We are doing a lot of studies in there, but we can see many impacts. We can see impacts in their behavior. They are way less tolerant to presence of vehicles, people. We can see impacts on the numbers in terms of ratio, male-female, and age ratio, of course. And we can see in their face with the lack of tasks in more than 33% of females. And this is part of the research that I'm doing now in a postdoc, which is the ecological consequences of tasklessness. So for you to understand, all elephants, at least in the African continents, both male and females have tasks, right? But the taskless gene and that allele also happens or occurs naturally in a population. It's there somewhere, and it's a gene that is shared with many other mammals, including us humans. It's something about malformation and etc. in the teeth. But poaching targets elephants with big tusks, and once they're gone, doesn't matter, just elephants with tusks are the next target. But what happened is in that population, most of the ones with tusks were removed. So the ones that had the tuskless gene started to, maybe they survived and they started to recreate and regrow and repopulate the park. And we noticed that it's only females, so why? I have never seen a tuskless male. And after a lot of data and analysis, we found that this gene is linked to sex, to the X chromosome, so that's why we only see tuskless females in that population and others. And we have an hypothesis that perhaps it's deleterious for males, which means that kill males. We don't know where, when, what stage, embryo, young, we don't know. Tuskless starts to showing in elephants when they are 2 or 3 years old. You start seeing white tips coming out. And if you don't, you know it's tuskless and so on. So it brought us a lot of questions, and we wonder if, tasks in elephants are not just to embellish them. It's not just to show and be pretty. They have a function. They used to bark trees, the owls males fight. And we don't know what kind of other kind of behaviors that are passed through mother to child, or the social dynamics on the herds that depends or not of being tuskless. But one thing I have to say is that the tuskless females are the most, I won't say aggressive, most protective ones that I have encountered. So it might also be linked to some of the behaviors that we see. But can you imagine, the most important question here is, if it's a recovery population that doesn't have enough males because of the tuskless gene, how viable is this population? It's something for us to think about. And after I finished my master's in conservation biology in 2017, I went back and my director said, "What now?" And I was like, "I don't know, I need a job, give me a job." And he said, "Start something." So I decided to start the Elephant Ecology Project. And my main focus on this is to study this recovery population. I was deeply inspired by the long-term study of the Amboseli elephants that is more than 40 years. And you can see who grew and met who and who had which baby, and then which drought affected or which hybrid poaching wave really decreased the number of elephants. And you can see all those dynamics through time. So my idea, my main interest is to see how this recovering elephant population is going to do in this habitat that missed them a lot, in a different habitat. What does it mean for the social dynamic between different groups? What is the impact it's going to have in the ecology of the park? And most importantly, what does it mean for the people that now live next to them around the park? So Gorongosa National Park is a buffer zone. Right? This is the park core area, and around a buffer zone where more than 200,000 people live. It is in this buffer zone where more of our human development activities are targeted on. But as you can see, Gorongosa National Park is not fenced. The river Pungwe is on the south of the park and is what limits the park and the community. And of course, this is nothing for an elephant if there's ripe crops on the other side. So as elephants grow and they recolonize their habitats where they existed, because they remember, there's a lot of people around. So to track, it's really important to know and understand where elephants are, what they're doing and where. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing there. You're smiling at that picture. I'll explain what I'm doing, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of context. So And after when I started the project, I rely heavily on monitoring data, so movement ecology, and I use GPS satellite tracking collars to track these elephants. So far, I think I've tracked around 500 elephants based on the matriarchs and etc. Because yes, first thing I do is focus on the matriarch, that big female or lead female in front of the group. Why? Because I know that if I am tracking a matriarch, I'm not following only one elephant. I'm following two or maybe 60 elephants. And to know where a female takes a whole herd means a lot. Because for some reason, females do tend to balance more risk and benefits than male elephants in the landscape. So that's my main point. However, because of many other reasons, I then started to track as well male elephants. I'll explain why. So yes, you have to do through an helicopter in Gorongosa. Unfortunately, it's not easy as is in certain places in the continent like Kenya, where you can see an elephant over there and you just drive there and dart. No, Gorongosa have a lot of thick vegetation and different landscapes and wetlands, so it's not safe either for us or for the elephant to not doing in a helicopter. So with some colleagues, vets from the park, and in the beginning we had a wildlife capture specialist. I would hop in a helicopter, pick the elephant I want, and they'll say, no, you cannot do that one because that one is heavily pregnant, for example. So there is a criteria. So I decide which elephant to put a GPS satellite collar, and once the elephant is down, we're running against time, and we try to do all the things possible, including put the elephant, the GPS satellite collar, collect samples, and especially in the name of collaboration, especially with Princeton and Rob Pringle's lab, diet and nutrition studies, that is platinum sample straight from the rectum of the elephant. I collect dung. That's what I'm doing, yes. And it helps that I'm small, so it's not too much bother for the elephant. And thanks to this data, thanks to this tracking data of almost 500 elephants through time since 2018, as I said, and let me remind you, the collars may stay alive up for 3 years, which means that I have to re-collar. Remember, I'm not doing for 3 years or 5 years in and out, I have data by. I want this to be a long-term process, so I have to always recolor either the same individual or not, depending on the sex. So, looking at that data, I only brought some simple results here, but we can see already the difference in range sizes between male and females and across seasons. And we have noticed that also that Gorongosa elephants, there's actually smaller range comparing to many other elephants in different parts of Africa, such as Tsavo, Samburu, and Etosha National Park, and also Wanje Park in Zambia, if I'm not wrong. So, and you can see as well, there's a Gorongosa map, the mountain and the buffer zone. You can see how a lot of the range is actually outside of the park in the buffer zone. We also said that the male preference and change, the male preference in habitats changes according to season. I'll tell you more about that and what it means. This is just minimum convex polygons. It's just all the tracking data and to have the biggest for visualization what area an elephant is using. The other thing we saw was this significant interaction with elephants and the level of greenness, the productivity of the vegetation in the area. Using resource selection functions, we saw that, yes, elephants avoid area with a lot of people, they want to be closer to water, far from roads, but when it's about greenness and the landscape, we noticed that both male and females would follow high level of EVI, enhanced vegetation index, which means that greenness, so forage, food, during wet season, they always follow that trend. However, still inside or outside the park, they always look for the green food. However, when it's dry season, we see the difference. Females don't change at all. They still follow I want the green. But males, they then start dropping. They start following vegetation that is less green. So what does this mean? And why outside the park? You can imagine. Anyone has any thoughts of why would males change the preference in the dry season? No? What? Okay. Because new topic. Then guess what? Because less level of greenness means that certain crops in the buffer zone outside the park are maturing. So they're not really green. They might be less green or yellowish. Crop raiding is one of the biggest forms of human-elephant conflict everywhere where elephants exist. So crop raiding as this form of conflict is also becoming one of the biggest threats. You have something to say? Okay, cool. But human-elephant conflict has many impacts in the people and on elephants in the areas where they overlap. As people and elephants come close in proximity as with population growth and more deforestation or habitat transformation for agricultural lands, there's like crops right there next to an elephant protected area, for example. And even though the elephant may not have the intention to go eat them, just passing through already destroys a lot. So it affects a lot in terms of damage of crops, infrastructure. It may injure or even kill people, or result in elephants also being killed and etc. But one of the things that this has been studied quite intensively in Africa in the last perhaps 50 or 30 years or so. Mostly people were focused on the damage caused. How much is it costing? Money. But now we're calling to look more into the indirect causal impacts of human-elephant or wildlife conflict. There's this delayed cost, these things that don't show right away. It's not always about the money, but what if you lose the breadwinner of the family? How do you have to cope? Or what if you have to care for your farm or crops all night and you do not sleep and you're exposed to mosquitoes and disease and you cannot go to school, or your children then cannot go to school because they have to help you, protecting the farm or replanting seedlings, etc., because it was destroyed by elephants. So if there's anyone, I'd say this is not only for elephants, as I say, it's also for wildlife. Is there anyone that is looking to interactions about people and wildlife? This is the area that you would perhaps find the most interesting results these days, the indirect cause and impacts of this interaction. So, of course, in Gorongosa it's not different. We have human-elephant conflict from the last 7 years. But not only in Gorongosa, but many other places, managers, conservationists, researchers are looking into solutions to try to mitigate or stop or reduce these bad impacts. And there's many things that's been done, like from conventional electronic fences to a more community-based. Now we're talking about community-led approaches. People used to talk about removal of the problematic animal. I say problematic because that means that people are not really understanding the behavior of that elephant. If we remove the sheaf in this room, it's going to be a matter of time until another sheaf comes out, right? So it's not about removal of problematic animals, but it's really about problematic landscapes. And that includes a lot of land use planning and other things that we need to think about. But one of the things that we can do in the ground is, work with people and community-led or based mitigation strategies. Many as well, chili fences or tobacco, changing crops, and etc., etc. But one of the most famous and charismatic, I would say, that being used a lot in the continent, I'm not saying that is 100% and solves everything, is the beehive fences. The beehive fences is actually a set of bees that are suspended and linked by a rope and blocking an entrance for the elephant. It was tested in Kenya by Dr. Lucy King in Savo, but it comes from an old African folklore that elephants are afraid of bees. And yes, she tested, and they are. Just the zzz of the bee is enough to freak them out. Even flying a drone over an elephant herd, you see the reaction right away because the drone also have a similar sound to a bee buzzing, for example. So in Savo, the way they did, they circulated the crop area, and so people registered that yes, elephants are not entering, they're stopping the elephants. But the way it is in the communities around Gorongosa, they're not clustered. People farm along the riverbank because the more fertile soils, etc. So for us, what we had to do, we had to adapt to our reality. That's one of the things. There's a lot of strategies out there that needed to be adapted. It's not one thing solves it all, right? So we use beehive fences in these entry points where elephants are trying to enter. They cross the river, they leave the park, cross the river, entry points where the slope is lower, and etc. So we block those entry to the community. And this, it is a beautiful example of how nature can work. We can work with nature to solve or try to mitigate one of our biggest problems. And it also gives this alternative income from the sweet honey that the bee guards produce. So people from the communities, they work with these beehives, they take care, it's their beehives, and they harvest the honey, they sell in a market price, and etc. And the most important is beehive or beekeeping is a very gendered thing in Mozambique. Women are afraid of bees. I am terrified of bees. But now we have women in our communities actually working as beekeepers and doing the beehive fences for to save crops and also to have an extra reward and be more empowered, as they said. So they do work to some extent. This is a video, for example, at night. This is Tunekash. I named this elephant after our vet. Very troublemaker. He was trying to get there, and you see the behavior. He hears the sound and touch it up, but it doesn't really solve everything because elephants are very smart. Some of them would just walk until they find the end of the beehive. And even though it might be very bushy, they keep walking, and if there's no other way, they come back. They pick the youngest on the group, and they throw him. So it's like very suicidal. It's like this young bull just goes and breaks the hive, and everyone runs in panic but through the fence. So, they can quickly adapt. That's why it's so important to do a rotation of strategies. So there's no one better than the people who are just there next door to see these changes and have the tools to adapt to these changes, right? And in fact, they might be the ones that will bring the biggest solutions or the most long-term solutions. So you will hear perhaps a lot of the term coexistence. Coexistence was coming to the sense that is where people and wildlife live together without attrition. Say, nah, it's not that. Not anymore. This term is evolving, and now we're talking about people and wildlife living in co-adaptive manner. So I say that coexistence is not an end point, not a static thing that we reach out there, but is the status where we have ups and downs, and we try to be in equilibrium. So of course, we need to also, when we work in the ground, you have to think that pragmatism works. Ideologies, not always. We really need to adapt whatever is there to our reality and what works for us or not on the ground. But besides all of these, there's still a lot to be done. In the next 50 years, again, we're going to have way more pressure on the natural resources with the human population growing, with more conflict, with more, illegal habitat loss and illegal wildlife trade. We have more cyclones, unfortunately. We do share that here, more disease and etc. And all these are just going to stretch the willingness of people to coexist with wildlife. So we really need to start thinking sustainable and resilient communities and infrastructures and ways of living with nature. That, as I say, I repeat, pragmatism works, and ideology is not always. We need to always remember that. But besides all that, I'll say that in the continent, and I dare to say also here in this island, we have a very young and vibrant, right, young generation, very passionate. We see a lot of flows, a lot of things that are not going as we want or they should. There's a lot of gatekeepers. There's a lot of, struggles there. I'm not even going to talk about gender dynamics. But I urge all of you young people to really fight for it and take the lead and do something about it. In Mozambique, it's not very different system as here in Madagascar, but some of us are really trying to focus on the positives as well and do better than before. And you young people as well, and as involving like these new perspectives. We bring new perspective. We see how we don't want the future to be. At least that we know. We don't want the future to be in a certain way. And now, at least in the continent or in my country, young people are marching as either in a political settings or environmental settings and everything. We are taking the lead. We are standing for this. And this is just some pictures of some of my heroes, colleagues from Gorongosa and around the park or Mozambique doing amazing work. And they are, most important, they are my inspiration. They are the reason why I remember to do what I do. And yeah, it's just a reminder that populations that have been destroyed by humanity, worst tendencies, can also be restored or rehabilitated by people using, examples of humanity's best tendencies. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of commitment and funding, and a lot of knowledge as well, but it is possible. And I want to say thank you to my most important donors. I would say start from the park, Gonçalves National Park, Wild Elements, National Geographic, WCN, and the zoo, that has always since the beginning not only thrown me into the fire to challenge me to do more and new things, but also was there supporting me, not always with money, but with skills and training and just guidance. And I wanted to also invite you students to look at opportunities for all these things I said, through Wings, Women of Discovery, to National Geographic, to WCN, scholarship for emerging wildlife leaders. I think is the new term for that grant, wildlife leaders, but ones in particular, emerging wildlife conservation leaders, but they have a particular scholarship for vets, which is, I found it outstanding because I've never seen a donor or grantor say, we are funding vets capacity building. So it's very important, it's there. And I invite you to connect through Wild Hub, this platform when it's for students or conservation practitioners. And this platform, if you go and see it, it's for free. You pass to a veto thing, but you can set a room. For example, MBC could have a room there of conservation practitioners or students or researchers to do discussions and etc. etc. Or you can zoom out of your room and connect with different other rooms all over the world, and any student can throw questions. Today I received a question from conservationists in Zimbabwe saying, hey, I'm looking for this and this, I'm looking for funding, I'm looking for an opportunity for internship. So anyone that is there and have knowledge, share and guide. So I really recommend this one. It's the one I used so far. And I wanted to say thank you to Princeton University, to Dr. Benjamin Rice. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for MBC. And of course to my darling Estelle, for all your help and all your help and companionship during my visit. Thank you.